Okay, we are back for Baltimore City Information Technology. All right, before we begin, similar to what we did during budget hearings in fiscal year 21 last year, there are going to be a few topics that are going to be off limits for this conversation today. I'm going to read through a quick script. These are the topics that I'm asking committee members to not pursue in any specific detail. Topics include requesting specific details into the 2019 ransomware attack and its findings. It's important to note that as of right now, Baltimore's ransomware attack is still an ongoing federal investigation, so the agency is going to be limited in what they are able to say. Number two, requesting specific details regarding Baltimore City's IT security current state or gaps that need remediation. And number three, requesting specific details about infrastructure, applications, or data vulnerabilities or assessments related to the results from these areas. I appreciate everyone's cooperation on this front. If anyone requires a private briefing, Todd Carter, the CIO, has agreed to make himself available to have that briefing with you to answer your questions. But those topics will be off limits. Yeah, so I think we're ready to go. Todd, if you would like to take it away. I think, yes, sir. Colleagues, any questions about the off-limit topics before we begin? Okay. Todd, floor is yours when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Take it away.
I am going to present my screen. Hold 1 second. Councilman, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Are we ready? Good afternoon, Councilman Costello, and good afternoon, esteemed members of the committee. My name is Todd Carter. I'm here today to talk about the Baltimore City Information and Technology Organization. One of the things that, and I will be less than 5 minutes, I think that is the guidance that you wanted to give us for this part of the presentation. But BSIT is in a transition. We've evolved, and our technology has evolved over time, and we haven't been evolving with technology. And we're stepping up to meet the challenges of today, the challenges of modern day expectations by transitioning where we are and versus where we need to be. When you look at our budget for 2022, you're going to see lots of puts and takes. And what we're trying to do is to align our spending to our budget. It may take a few cycles to get that to be 100%, but the end goal is to make sure that our budget is sound, defensible, but our spending matches the budget. The team for administration is the team that's charged with fixing our budgets, our broken processes and metrics data. They're the team that are to get the right people in the right jobs to help us build our culture and to help us manage the change or manage change throughout Baltimore City as we implement programs and applications. This next slide really talks about applications, and I'm going to dive into what I want to talk about here. But we've made significant improvements in how we manage and measure IT, but we recognize we still have work to do. One of the hiccups I think you've seen in the budget book is in what we communicated regarding our Open Baltimore statistics. And we had a hiccup between us and BBMR because we were looking to rationalize the number of data sets versus just piling. We're looking to rationalize and making sure we had a quality set of data sets in Open Baltimore versus hundreds and hundreds of data sets, in which case some of them were not used at all. And so in rationalizing that, we kind of got mixed up in terms of, do we do the incremental number of data sets that we want to add, or we do the full number? I know that's something may come up later on, but I just wanted to put that out there right now. We recognize that we have that challenge. And by the way, we do a lot with metrics in BSIT, and as we go throughout today, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about some of what we do. This service also includes the costs associated with Workday. And we're expecting to do more and more in application space, building applications, because applications will help us solve problems in Baltimore City. That's the next frontier that we really need to go to. Our 311 call center. Our call center has risen to the occasion during the pandemic. Best in class, best in class. And they have transitioned to a work from home environment. They are more productive, they're more healthy, and they continue to provide excellent customer service. And as we go throughout today, we have our 311 director, Lisa Allen, on to address any of the questions and concerns that come up from the committee. And then lastly, our enterprise delivery services. We've made significant improvements in our security and infrastructure groups. We have a ways to go though. We're not out of the woods, but we've developed very quickly and support the infrastructure that we're working on now with respect to everyone working remotely. We built a security awareness program that everyone uses. We've upgraded our CAD and CityWorks systems, and we even found savings in our 800 megahertz system from a new hire who was just hired and immediately were able to pay for themselves. So if you think through the services that we have, the administration, the applications group, the infrastructure and security group, and the 311 call center, all have been making strides to make better services for not only Baltimore City employees, but also the residents of Baltimore City as a whole. And with that, Councilman Costello, I will yield to you and the rest of your committee for questions.
Thank you, Todd. Can you please pull the presentation down?
Sure.
Mr. President.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm okay at this time.
Thank you. Colleagues, let's start with Conway, went up and down, then Dorsey and Schleifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, let me turn on my camera. My first question is...
Councilman Conway, please hang on 1 second.
Sure.
I'm sorry. It's
You hear the backdraft or the whatever you call that feedback?
I'm tethered to my
I think it's playing the audio through your speaker,
okay.
and you want the audio to
Yeah, got
come
it.
in through your headphones.
I got hold on here.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so we got Conway. Dorsey, did you not have a question?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so we got Conway and then Schleifer and then Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question...
Yeah, I still need a second, Councilman Conway. We're still trying to
Oh, okay.
technical difficulties.
I don't know if I have the. Just can you turn the sound off here, please? Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Got it.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right. Councilman Conway, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, so the recommended budget includes $200,000 from the Innovation Fund
Yes.
to invest in automated online chat technology for 311 service requests.
Yes.
Are we exploring opportunities for permanent funding for that technology if it works out well?
For permit funding?
Permanent.
Oh, permit funding.
Yes.
So the goal is to implement the technology in a way that we don't have a tail of cost. That tail of cost will depend upon, one, the licensing that we use and whether or not we put the software in the cloud or put it on premises. There are pluses and minuses of doing most. We're just at a point where we're pulling together requirements and we're looking to find vendors to actually do this work for us. So we're not at that point yet, Councilman Conway, but we'll be soon.
Awesome, thank you. And then the other question I have is, so during the transfer to the new Open Baltimore portal, there was a temporary loss of some data sets from the old portal to the new one because they hadn't been reformatted. Have we been able to restore that?
I'm not aware of that we lost data sets, but that's something that we can look into. That has not come up on my radar screen at all during the transition. I do not know if these data sets were because they weren't used or no longer loaded, but to my understanding, I'm not aware of, and my team, I just got a Teams chat from one of my guys. We're not aware of anything that's been loaded, so we can, if you don't mind, we'll reach out to you and get the specifics.
Sure, that'll be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Schleifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Carter, I just wanted to thank you and your team for everything you guys have been doing. Since we've had all those meetings back last term after the ransomware attack and subsequently you taking over, I have to say the upgrades and improvements you guys have rolled out has been exactly what you said you would do. And so I don't actually have any questions for this hearing. I've seen with all the increase in budget that we've looked at for BCIT, I do feel very confident that you are leading the agency through all the upgrades and through all the programs that the citywide needs to bring us into the 21st century. We're a little late getting there, but I just wanted to thank you and your team for the work that you guys are doing. And just as you saw when you had a little issue over there, how quickly Chris responds to the councils as quickly as he got over to your chair over there. So just want to thank you guys again. In any way that we can be supportive of your efforts, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have work to do, and we certainly need not only the support of the administration, but as well as the council and this committee. But we are on a journey, but I really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would this be the section where we would talk about 311 upgrades? I did see Director Allen on the call.
Director Allen should be on the call.
Absolutely.
I'm here. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good.
So I was just hoping you could walk us through. I know that there's
Councilman,
a push in the
can you
budget to.
Marguerite, can you add city administrator Shorter, please, or elevate him again? If he's not. Thank you. Councilman Burnett, my apologies. Please continue.
Yeah, I was excited to see there was a $200,000 upgrade scheduled for the 311 system. Can you walk us through what that'll look like and how it will have an impact for our constituents?
Well, we are in the process of looking into a chat box, and that's what if you want to call it an upgrade, will be. It will give the citizens another way to just access us. And also we're looking to make sure our chat box is a little more, make sure the requirements are case to case so that the customers can, access 311 in another way. So it's not really an upgrade, it's an addition to Salesforce to just give them another portal and another way to contact us and another way for us to communicate with them. So right now we're in the requirement stage, making sure that we have added requirements so it's just not your usual chat box, so to speak. A lot of chat boxes push people right to the web. We already have a robust web, so we're just making sure that we're including everything that we can. And as Councilman Conway inquired about, we are looking at making sure that we make the right decisions so the cost is down and just doesn't keep piling up and it's not ongoing. So it's actually not an upgrade again, or it really is an enhancement to what we're already doing.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that roll out.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My second question was for Service 805. I'm guessing the percentage, one of the performance measures is percentage of COB employees completing cybersecurity awareness training. The actual is 0, but I'm guessing that's a typo because I know at least I did it. And I'm certain others did as well. So I was just trying to see where we were with the cybersecurity training and meeting those goals.
Just so that I'm clear, Councilman Burnett, because I had some trouble hearing you on the headphones as well as you're sitting across from the room. You're trying to understand how we have what our numbers are specifically for the cybersecurity awareness training.
Yeah, and the budget book on page 121, it has it at 0% participation, but I was certain that wasn't true.
So here are two numbers that we have. The first focus has been one on the requirements for cybersecurity awareness training for all of those leaders and supervisors who are using Workday. That's part one. And for those individuals, we are something like, I believe it's 78% of those people have completed the training. Across all of Baltimore City, our numbers are at about 28%. However, I want to give you some good news. As we do phishing exercises throughout the year, our numbers have been going steadily down as compared to the government averages relative to the number of people who inappropriately click on our phishing test that we have. We have our Chief Security Officer, Kevin Kearney, here if you have any other additional questions, Councilman Burnett.
Yeah, I didn't have anything else. I was just trying to figure out why that number was so low on that end, because I do know I've been sort of watching it since the ransomware attack, and I do want to give credit that I've definitely seen an uptick in training and sort of overall awareness, at least on my end, as it relates to cybersecurity work to prevent that moving forward. I didn't have any other follow-ups, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that training is extremely important, and all of the administration is taking it very seriously, and so we are making some strides there. Thank you.
Todd, I'll second what my colleagues said. Burnett and Schleifer, it has been a breath of fresh air to have you in this role over the last 2+ years since the ransomware attack. I think it's been about 2 years and 26 days, but who's counting? I had 2 quick questions in the budget book. First, and maybe this is for Mira. Service 803 on page 115 in volume 2. There's a performance measure. It's an outcome, number of data sets made to public on Open Baltimore. And bear with me, in fiscal 17, we had 768. In fiscal 18, we had 192. We didn't have an actual for fiscal 19, which I suppose makes sense because ransomware happened in early May of 19. And then we had a target of 204 in fiscal 20 with an actual of 108. And then last year we had a target of 15. And now this year we have a target of 112. Whose numbers are those?
Can I speak to that before I
Please.
pass it to Mira? So, Councilman Costello, I alluded to this earlier in my opening remarks regarding, one, the rationalization that we're doing of the total number of data sets, the 768, where we've had a number of data sets that were incomplete, not used, and really didn't tell a story. So we started down the path to let's get the right information out, the right number of data sets, and we wanted to recast this metric such that we would look at the incremental data sets that were added over time, not necessarily the total number. So what you see in terms of the 15 and 21 is an error that we take responsibility for that error in communicating with BBMR for changes to get into the budget book to reflect the appropriate number. The 112 number is correct, but the 15 number is something that that was the misstep that I talked about earlier.
Okay. I mean, it feels like this is another example of a performance measure that may not be that meaningful. For example, I know in the past, where's 311 in here? It's under service
804.
804. Number of calls received in 311. And Ms. Allen, we've talked about this in the past, and I think you do an absolutely wonderful job over there. But your core function is to take calls, right? So if you're supposed to take a target of 890,000 calls, you have no control over that. If citizens don't call 311, they don't call. If there's 1.2 billion calls to 311, that's really not because you did anything special. You were just doing your basic job, right? And this is just a continuation of a frustration with the performance measures that we have in these budget books as to whether or not they tell a story. And I feel like some of these performance measures don't tell a story. And I don't know that that's necessarily on BSIT. I think part of that is on BBMR, and figuring out how we better measure how effective our agencies are.
Well,
I mean,
if I
you
may,
have-
Councilman, I'm sorry. I thought you were done, but if I may just give you a little bit
Please.
about why I continue to like and keep, or I do talk to BBMR about the number of calls. I think the number of calls are important just to kind of correlate how well we're doing. If we are answering our calls, for example, on an average of 20, within 20 seconds, 10 seconds, that means a lot when you have over 300, 400, a half a million calls. Whereas if you say I'm answering calls within 20 seconds, but you only get 10 calls, that may tell another story. So while I do understand what you're saying about the output, we do need to keep our eye on the number of calls that we're receiving to make sure that, that's a great number. You're taking almost you're taking over 500,000 calls a year, and you're answering all of them an average of 20 seconds versus taking 100 calls a year and answering at the same time. So that's where I look at the number of calls received, not to disagree with you. I have to agree with you. I have no control over who calls. It's very important to keep your eye on that number.
No, I can appreciate that, and I think that makes sense, but the type of performance measure is effectiveness, and you already do have two other effectiveness performance measures. One is the average time to answer a call, which was, you guys did amazing in 2020, 10 seconds, which was a decrease from 22 seconds. And so that's great. And then the percentage of calls answered within 60 seconds in 2020, you exceeded your target of 90% with 96%. I guess it's just an overall theme for me in the budget book, in that, those two performance measures seem to make sense and tell me whether or not you're doing an effective job. But the number of calls is like, like when you show up to work, that's what you're supposed to do at the call center, is take calls, right?
Yes.
So I'll just make that comment. My other question was,
Chairman Costello, do you mind if I respond to that?
please.
So what was not necessarily reflective of BSIT and Lisa Allen's group, I think it is reflective of more citywide. If we are handling our issues proactively, we will see less 311 calls. I think you're right in the sense that the effectiveness is probably a misnomer, but I think it is important to tell the story of the output and the sheer volume that Ms. Allen's group is doing on an annual basis.
It's a fair point. Thank you.
I'd just like to add one other
Please.
comment relative to the metrics that we in BSIT have overall. We've gone through an extensive review of metrics, and if you look, for instance, on Service 805, you can start to see some of those metrics that are meaningful, that do drive performance, that do drive outcomes, are starting to be reported. So we've taken a lot of work to get that better. We know we have work to do, but we're on the path to making improvements in that area.
While I'm on this, just out of curiosity, we only have actual numbers from 2 fiscal years prior, because the budget is developed and published in the middle of the fiscal year, right? So there's no way that we could, it's not humanly possible for you to have the numbers for fiscal year 21, because this book, most of the work that was done to put this book together was probably completed in, I don't know, late February, early March. Is that fair? Is there a way that moving forward, we could track performance throughout, maybe it's 6 months, so we could go July 1 through December 31st to better, and I'm talking citywide, I guess that's a question for BBMR. So we had something a little more meaningful to help the council understand where the agencies are at. Because right now, all we have is, we only know how this agency performed in these areas through June 30 of 2020.
It's possible. I would say that it may not be possible in this book, just per the amount of work it takes to go and the data collection process, but it might be something we could look at in the future for putting online in partnership with the Office of Performance and Innovation. That might be something we could look to track in real time. I'm not sure that the budget book is the right way to collect that 6-month data, but I think your point is taken, and it's something we could look at potentially. And I know there's a lot of measures that lag even, past the budget collection point in the proposal phase in December. And so I think for those measures, it would be more difficult, but it's something we could take a look at.
Okay. I've got another question, but I'll wait till next round. Who's up next? We had Schleifer, Conway went, Ramos, and then Dorsey. Ramos, and then Dorsey.
Go ahead. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. One is I wanted to know, because it's nowhere in this section, how we're doing on the interface of 311 and all of the other BSIT interfaces in terms of other languages besides English. Because we do have, a large population of Latinos that are living in the city now. And of course, we're one of the refugee centers. So what is the process when, someone calls who doesn't know how to speak English or is going to go on that chat? Have we hired people who can speak the language? Are you just using Language Line? Are you referring them just to MEMA? Like, what is the process there? And I'm hoping that at some point we'll be able to hire people who will actually speak the language in order to, help with these services.
Well, in regards to 311, we do use a Language Line 100%. We do have a couple of agents that do speak Spanish, but a couple of challenges happen with hiring folks and trying to get them, more diverse languages. First of all, we're open 16 hours a day, and it's very hard to cover so many languages 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the Language Line tends to work for us. Also, in terms of quality control, if everyone doesn't speak that language, it's very difficult for supervisors, managers, and leaders to actually score and quantify and coach people on those types of calls. So we do use the Language Line 100%. And again, it just works for us because of the amount of time we have to cover, as well as the languages we have to cover, and in terms of making sure everything is consistent and quality is good.
And that'll be also when you have the new chat feature, which, by the way, I'm excited about. So the chat feature will also have a way that somebody can pick the language.
I'll have to partner with my other BCIT employees, team members about that. So that is something to look forward to. There are plenty of websites and chats that you can translate by using a drop-down button. So I'll pass that on to my team members.
So, Councilman,
Sure, I appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead.
Councilwoman Ramos, one of the things that we have in this upcoming year is a project to redo the Baltimore City websites and to make sure that they have the accessibility options and language options necessary to function in a normal day's world that we are in, and that will include the chat bot as well.
Thank you. I know you work with MEMA on those items because like Google Translate itself doesn't do justice to the language. So I think you are working with BSIT on that. And so I appreciate that. My second question is unrelated to language. It's we had a hearing a few months ago now about what closed means in 311. And right now, it just means that somebody did the inspection, it's closed, and then it's off to another agency. But I think there was a specific request. I believe it was the Council Vice President's bill to make sure that closed actually means the job was done. And I'm wondering what the status is of that.
Okay. So I guess I'll answer that. We're working very hard with the agencies to kind of realign the workflow process so it will match what they would pick as outcomes to jobs to give specific messages to customers without closing the work order. So we're working very hard on that and very quickly. It's very challenging because it will require, and it does require, which agencies know, that they need to give us language to do that so we can make the workflow more steady before closing things. Some of the progress we have made is making sure that people are not closing investigations, but actually transferring or linking them to where they go. So that's another training opportunity that we've been working with. So we are working very closely with agencies to get them in a line to pivot that way.
And when do you expect that? Is there going to be like a switchover that says, "Hey, we're doing this, differently now," or that we can make an announcement that people should be seeing things differently? What does that look like?
It's a big work in progress, and we are finding that we're doing agency by agency. We did commit to the end of the month, trying to work with HCD, which seemed to be our most challenging agency. So we're moving right along with them. So it's a work in progress, a very big project, a very big change in workflow for agencies. So we're moving along so that we get it right. We don't just want to throw it up there, but it's not a flick of a switch. It's working with agencies, it's documenting their workflows and making sure that we're all aligned with how to close a service request and how to transfer a service request. So we're excited about that because agencies understand what we're trying to do now and they're moving along very well with it.
And Councilwoman Ramos, sorry about that. I'd like to add, when Lisa mentions it's a we, there are a number of agencies that are partnered on a team we call the IWIT team. And we actually submitted a report to the council that discussed all the items that Lisa had mentioned. But in addition to that, there is some technical work that really needs to be figured out and done to make sure that all of the right data is passing to the systems at the right time. And so far, we are on schedule to do that analysis work and then determine what the fixes are. So it's a team effort between HCD, 311, BSIT, DPW, DOT, and I think maybe a few other agencies. So it's really coming together, and it won't be like it won't be a one switch kind of thing. It'll be gradual improvements over time.
Thank you. Do you think within the year, by the time next year when we see you again in budget hearings, you'll have it taken care of? What's the kind of time frame?
Well, certainly, if I'm here talking to you about the same stuff next year, that's just not a good thing. And we've been making progress so far. I think we'll gladly come back to this committee or another committee, every quarter or whatever, just to say, here's the progress that we've made, and just to give you confidence that we are on the right track. In terms of how long it will take, some of the process work and training work that Lisa has mentioned can be finished in a finite time. Some of the technical work, we just don't have the right details at this point to say, here's the date. But we'll gladly get back to you.
Thank you. I'm just glad it's happening. Thank you very much for your attention to it. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dorsey and then Conway is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Councilwoman Ramos's point, I just wanted to mention something I was going to mention anyway, how great Thomas Moira is. If you haven't done the Salesforce training, I really suggest doing the Salesforce training. I did it last week, and I found, logging in and having somebody kind of walk me through the Salesforce back end to be really insightful in how agencies are or should be working with this. And in that training, there were about 26, 27 different employees from different agencies. And there was a good bit of time spent in that training on talking about this shift to really making providing better information externally to 311 users about the status and having useful information, and about including things like transfer SR numbers in there in the system, so that people see that stuff and can kind of follow the breadcrumbs. So the first thing I wanted to say is just thanks for having such great staff. Thomas has been there doing a great job since, I think, even before I was a council member. I had interactions with him just as a citizen, calling 311, asking if it was possible to make certain improvements to the 311 system, and he was helpful even then. The second thing I wanted to say is Mackenzie Reardon and everybody has done such a great job with the towing dispatch report. Todd, thank you so much for following up on that. That report is outstanding, and I'm just so thankful to the great work of BCIT leading that and working with so many agencies. And then just the last thing is, Todd, as usual, thank you. We've just been emailing recently about challenges with the new open data interface. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that open data interface. I think it's a really nice improvement in ways, but has some shortcomings or implementation kind of challenges that need to be worked out. Can you talk about that transition and just
Sure.
what's on the horizon there?
Yeah, sure. So we moved to the new Esri platform, which is, if most of us know, Esri is known for GIS databases and data layers, one on top of the other, and they've done a great job of that. One of the reasons we moved to that platform was the ability to tell a story with the data above and beyond just presenting data. Our ability to say, for instance, to overlay for construction projects as to where they are and talk about the expenditures associated with the construction and why. And as we've gone through this journey, we've certainly run into a few challenges, but we've been working through those challenges. I think as of right now, we've had a total of 47 issues that have been escalated to us, and we've resolved, I believe, around 35 of those issues. So a very small team working on and making improvements to that system, but there's also an ecosystem of GIS people across all of Baltimore City that work in it every day. Some of the configuration challenges we have is helping to make the system more user-friendly, helping to make the interface more user-friendly and more intuitive. As Councilman Dorsey and I, for instance, emailed over the weekend, there are some things there that I believe may be configuration issues in terms of how we display and how we show data and how we can manipulate that data. So we've been working, we'll continue to work with Esri to help us, either understand the system to configure it better, or to submit improvements to help them think about it from the standpoint of a user, not necessarily a data scientist. So it's been a journey. We've had some bumps and bruises, but just like any systems, we see the benefit to Baltimore City. We'll be working with our new CDO, who will be, just hands in there as well. And we think we can make this a really good system for Baltimore City residents.
Thank you, and I look forward to just an introductory meeting with the CDO as soon as possible.
The CDO will have a segment right after us today, so you'll get a chance to talk to him then.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everybody at BCIT. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Colleagues, any other questions? Councilman Stokes, got two hands up.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, a lot of times we hear our constituents talk about when they call 311 and they say we're going to go out and investigate. But if we'll say we're going to go out, they don't explain to constituents you're going out to investigate. then we get calls back saying, hey, they came out, they didn't do nothing, because for some reason, that information is not being passed on to the constituents saying we're going out to investigate your complaint. They think now somebody will go out and they wonder why it's not done. And I had said this maybe again about 2 years ago. What are we doing in terms of making sure that when a constituent calls, that that conversation is being passed on to them? Two is, second question, when let's say an agency go out sanitation, but it had to get referred over to housing. There's no response back to the 311 after the constituent saying that, okay, we went out sanitation, we found out it was a housing issue. So what they do, they close it, but there's nothing being put in the system to say it was referred to housing. Are we working on that? I know Councilman Odette and Councilman Miller been talking about this. But when you're referring that complaint to another agency, if the constituent go back to look to see what happened and why it was closed, there's nothing said, oh, we went to housing. The first thing constituent gonna say is they closed it. So just a suggestion, maybe that can work on that also, because that's the complaint that I get, and I'm sure my colleagues get the same thing.
So Councilman Stokes, that's part of what we're working on and the challenges that we're working on to make sure that the workflow is going forward, as I spoke of before. So 311 relies on the information that the agency gives us. So we're working to tighten that up and get more detailed information. That's part of this whole process that we're going through now. So we're sure that this process will help in those concerns.
Well, my follow-up question is, I know you're working on that, and I believe that, but what is it is that going to require changing the software in the system? Because, I mean, the referral piece seems to be easy. It might be, I might say that on my end, but it's a little different for you. So when you talk about you working on it, there's a timeline in terms of saying that sanitation, it was a sanitation issue we found out was housing. How long would that take that now the constituent can go back into the system or pull up the 311 app and say, oh, it went over to housing? How long that timeline is? Because we still will get calls about they closed it. So is there a timeline, or you know where you at?
It's a work in progress. It really is. It's a work in progress, and we are making strides to go to it being done correctly or consistently with every agency. So I know patience is thing because we always keep doing this, but it's a work in progress that includes a lot of people, 311 agencies, IT information, and we're all working together to get that done. We hope and later. So we're all working together to do that. And it's no real timeline. It's not a switch that's going to switch. It's going to be a gradual improvement that everyone will be able to see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilman, I just want to assure you that this is a huge priority of the city administrator and the mayor. This is an issue that I've dealt with my entire career here. So we're not, besides looking at the policy or looking at the technology, we're also looking at, all the steps of the process to see if we actually need to refer it to an intermediary agent or intermediary agency, and if we could just cut that process out and it going directly to the agency that's going to do the cleanup or fix the issue.
Thank you.
Todd, quick question. The appropriation from fiscal 21 to 22 is projected to go down $1.5 million, but there's an increase in staff of 13 positions. I'm assuming this is attributable to less of a capital investment as a result of ransomware. Like we've spent those dollars and that's kind of phased out on like capital work.
Yeah, I would attribute it to we're doing a number of we're doing a number of work associated with Workday, as well as other capital programs that we are using labor dollars and capital space to execute those programs. if that makes sense, if I'm hearing your question correctly.
Yeah, I guess there's a $1.5 million decrease, but there's an increase of 13 positions. I'm sorry, I didn't ask it the right way. There's $1.5 million decrease, but there's an increase of
Yes,
13
yes.
positions. And that's because capital costs, I'm assuming that's because capital costs have gone down as a result of kind of that surge of spending post ransomware is kind of winding down.
Yeah, I would say it a different way than that. Capital costs actually are steady at around $7 million. That's what our appropriation is for 2022. And a number of projects that we have will offset O&M labor to capital labor because that labor is associated with that capital project.
Got it.
If I may, the big decrease in this subject, in the service is also the fact that the ERP project budget goes down year over year. Last year was around 17 million. It goes down to 14.5 million. So that's the biggest change. And there was some conversion of contractual positions to FTEs that don't have much of a dollar difference, but the big decrease you see is a result of the project budget going down year over year.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Colleagues, any other questions for Todd and the team? All right, Todd, we're going to ask you to stay on with us. We have Jason Hardebeck and we have Justin, help me out here because I don't want to mispronounce it. Alsace? Got it. I say it real quick like that. Perfect. All right, so we got Jason and Justin coming on. Are you guys logged in?
I actually have their slides on
Great, yeah, if you could bring
my
those up.
computer, and for whatever reason, it's really touchy today. So just bear with me 1 second. Can I be set up to share, please? And do you want to see the slide from Broadband or the CDO first? Any choice?
Yes, that would be great. I think many of our colleagues haven't had an opportunity to meet with Jason or Justin formally, although Jason was formally with the city a number of years back. Yeah, what I'd like to do is give 5 or 6 minutes to each of them just to introduce themselves.
Sure.
And kind of talk through their slides. And then we'll jump into questions if there are any.
I stopped sharing so they can do that. Jason, did you want to start? Councilman, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Take it away, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. City Council, my name is Jason Hardebeck, newly on board as Chairman Costello pointed out the second time around. I'm on as the Director of Broadband and Digital Equity. The current public health crisis has really proven that digital divide has just exacerbated all those existing inequities, and this office was created in large part to start to address those digital divide issues aggressively with an ultimate goal of closing the digital divide in Baltimore. Would you like the slide up, or should I just talk to it?
I can bring it up.
Okay. I mean, it's either way. There are two primary goals for digital divide in Baltimore. And I should actually define a digital divide for everyone just to make sure we're all on the same page. It's really typically described as the difference between those who have the ability to take full advantage of technology in our modern society and those who are not In terms of what we are intending to do in Baltimore, there's really two primary focuses in our initial efforts. One is to increase the availability of reliable and affordable internet access for all Baltimore City residents. And the second is to increase adoption, which is the use of those technologies by focusing on end uses and amplifying existing efforts. And what I mean by end uses are really focusing, especially as it concerns our city government and city agencies, how does technology affect or impact the way that our citizens interact with government and with other services. And so a lot of that is really focused on figuring out how the city can play a role in assisting organizations and existing efforts, as opposed to perhaps starting something from scratch. So we really have, early on in the efforts, but I'd like to share just a couple of thoughts on our strategies going forward. Short-term basis, we have some significant connectivity gaps. Everybody's, I'm sure, very familiar with the challenges that Baltimore City Public Schools have had over the past year plus with addressing connectivity gaps or the homework gap. And in the case of virtual schooling, literally the entire connection to a student. They have roughly 16,000 hotspots deployed on a temporary basis with a waiting list of 5,000 more. There's been significant challenges in addressing just basic uses. We have a very high priority placed on figuring out how we can assist with that in the very short term, working both with multiple agencies, BCIT and DOT specifically, as well as Baltimore City Schools to address this issue and see what we can do in the short term to assist. I think Director Carter may have mentioned this already, but if not, I'll mention it again, that BCIT had previously budgeted $500,000 in fiscal year 21 and $1 million in fiscal year 22 to support community broadband pilots that had been previously specified, including some community partners, as well as potentially bringing service to one or two public housing developments as part of a pilot effort. And we are continuing to do that. We're also, looking at those funds as a potential resource to kickstart some of these the short-term efforts. The medium term, which I described the next 6 to 12 months, we have actually expanded the scope of the city's existing consulting arrangement to create a more comprehensive approach to municipal broadband. We expect that plan to be complete somewhere in the fall timeframe. This plan will build on what has already been done over the past couple of years. This is a plan that has been in the works for quite a while, and over the course of ransomware and other challenges has been delayed. But Director Carter and his team have actually started to implement on those pilots and some of the other aspects of the plan that make a lot of sense to do regardless. So we have expanded that scope to provide a plan as well as detailed financials, the financial implications of building out on our existing infrastructure, including the potential to bring municipal fiber to every address in Baltimore City eventually. As I said, that will be something we'll expect to see and be able to speak to later this fall. We are also beginning work on a digital equity scorecard, so we can start to actually quantify some of those key metrics around both access and adoption. Typically, when we talk about broadband access, at the federal level, it's a top-down approach. The FCC uses carriers who self-report data, and which we know it does not paint a complete picture. Looking at the official data from the federal level, Baltimore City appears to be 100% served. We know in reality, that's not the case. One major glaring omission is that affordability is not a factor in those metrics. So we are going to be developing a much more comprehensive way of viewing it and being able to do it at least at a neighborhood level, as well as starting to build in metrics around adoption. And as I said, those use cases and understanding how not just internet access, but the ability to use a device and use digital tools in order to be more successful in a modern society. And then ultimately, a long-term priority is to develop a sustainable way to leverage cities' existing assets. That includes fiber, a conduit system, vertical assets, amongst a number of other factors that could end up being an open access network approach, which is a common way for municipalities to leverage their infrastructure and to support public-private partnerships to bring additional ISPs to a city, for example, to create choice and to ultimately provide citizens with more options for access. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or elaborate on anything that the committee would like to discuss.
Thanks, Jason. Let's go to Justin to do his brief presentation. Then we're going to get to questions. Council President, I know has one.
I just put Justin's slide up.
Thank you, Todd. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, other City Council members, those viewing online. My name is Justin Elsass, and I'm honored to be before you today as our city's Chief Data Officer. I want to thank Mayor Scott and City Administrator Shorter for making data and transparency fundamental to the administration. Just one example of this is really redefining the CDO role and embedding it in the mayor's office. As a city resident and data scientist, I'm thrilled to witness and be part of such a dramatic move toward openness, accountability, and performance using data. This is my first time meeting many of you, so I thought I'd briefly share how I'm approaching the role while you review the information on the slide. Briefly, as you can see on the slide, the new CDO role is responsible for citywide data governance, which includes things like data quality, access, sharing, training, equity, and ethics. By statute, the CDO also remains responsible for the Open Baltimore program. We can return to the topic of role and responsibilities at the end, where I'll be happy to answer any questions. But I also wanted to kind of offer up my approach to the CDO role. I have a passion for data science and analysis, and over the last 3.5 years, I'm lucky to have served in multiple data roles with the city. I therefore approach the role of CDO not as an IT professional or technologist, but as a user of data. The Data Fellows program we launched demonstrated a previously unmet latent demand for more data expertise in our agencies, and COVID-19 further motivated agencies towards better data and better decision-making. Our data scientists and analysts throughout the organization are the ones who tirelessly convert data into real value for the city, and it's therefore in our best interests to remove barriers for them by making data more accessible, more relevant, less biased, and of higher quality. However, and perhaps more importantly, I also approach the role as a resident of Baltimore. As recent events have shown, from ransomware attacks to the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal exposed after the 2016 election, we must now more than ever be diligent and methodical about how we collect and manage our residents' information. As a resident, I appreciate that there are great opportunities to use data more effectively, but also desire protections, adherence to legal boundaries, and ethical and equitable data collection and use. To balance effectiveness with ethics, efficiency with equity, we've undertaken a citywide data governance initiative that will establish the rules of the road around data management. And I encourage you to visit Open Baltimore at the link on the slide to read our mission statement and review various documents we've already produced. We, meaning the agency's data stewards and the rest of the data governance committee, are committed to doing our work in the open, and you'll see many of our resources are already published there. To get our treatment of ethics and equity right where possible, we'll also seek resident voices so they can understand and determine the best course of action and how they want their data used. Data governance is a foundational step for any organization trying to grow its data culture and mature its data programs. Many of you are experienced and savvy users of Open Baltimore, a program enshrined in the city charter by a bill sponsored by then council member Mayor Scott. Even before I joined city government, I too was a user of city's open data. Since its inception, Open Baltimore has focused on simply publishing data, and indeed that is its mandate. However, we have an obligation to help residents understand how government works, and publishing data sets is not sufficient. We can and will publish more and varied data products that will help interpret the data so that residents can not only learn what the data are saying, but can learn how to manipulate data and generate insight themselves. With the help of a vibrant civic tech sector, powerhouse academic institutions, and engaged data-savvy residents, I also believe Open Baltimore can serve as a platform for engaging the city more broadly and solving some of our most pressing challenges. As we develop a broader vision for the Open Baltimore platform, we will want to hear your voices and our citizens' voices as we make residents the center of this important institution. Finally, with City Administrator Shorter's support and the help of numerous city agency data staff, we've hit the ground running. Open Checkbook was put together and launched in quick order. We also published the tax sale list on Open Baltimore, where previously it was only available in PDF form. So for those counting at home, that's +2 to Todd's performance metric for Open Baltimore data sets. Our agency data stewards are already off and running to inventory the city's data assets. We conducted a survey of data practices in collaboration with the Centers for Civic Impact at Johns Hopkins, and we're prototyping a better sharing mechanism between OPI and BPD. More is coming in short order. The Minority and Women-Owned Business Directory will also soon be published in Open Baltimore with a simpler and cleaner search tool so that our residents can more easily find and support our minority and women-owned businesses. We're researching the use of a ticketing system so that it's easier for everyone to report bugs or request new data, and also to track those requests. We'll also launch a training page that will direct residents and city employees to resources that will help them grow their data skills. And as CIO Carter mentioned, we're soliciting data stories from other agencies to again, try to provide insight as opposed to simple raw data sets. Again, I'm honored and thrilled to be serving Baltimore in this capacity. I'm happy now to speak to any of the information on the slide or answer any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Todd, can you please take down the presentation, or Jason, whoever has that up? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First quick question, Todd, is the conversion of the 800 megahertz network, is there a plan that's out there for folks to kind of understand and know what buildings will be affected and the time frame and everything associated with it?
When you're saying the conversion of the 800 megahertz network?
Yeah, you know, with the, I guess there's an idea of changing it over to fiber optic technology to connect it with the new ICBN network.
Yeah, so we don't have any immediate plans to convert the 800 megahertz network. We do have specific plans to upgrade the technologies within the 800 megahertz network that will allow more capacity on the network relative to, you know, the 800 network is connected from tower to tower, in some cases by fiber. And so that those types of upgrades occur or redundancies occur, but there are no immediate plans to convert the 800.
I guess when I use the word conversion, I guess I should have more appropriately said upgrade. Is there plans out there around the actual upgrade?
Yes, there are plans on the actual upgrade, Council President. And what we can do, we can get them to you and give you some additional information as to what specifically they are and when they're going to occur.
Got you. And with that, is there specific plans around public housing? You know, we constantly talk about the digital divide. We're talking about spending additional money for upgrades. Is there any specific plans that are directly tied to lighting up our public housing units?
Jason, you want to talk to that
one? President Mosby, we've had initial conversations with some of the team at HABC, but we have not had a conversation with Director Abrahams about that. I mean, I think that is something we're very interested in supporting. There are a couple options on the table right now. I'd be happy to share the details as they become available. But
yes, definitely really interested, Jason, in trying to see the specifics around it. I mean, when we're talking about, you know, capital improvements and upgrades around network, and we're already talking about this huge chasm associated with the digital divide, it seems like right there would be the priority. So definitely interested in trying to understand the plan around that.
Absolutely.
And then something that's near and dear to my heart, Jason, I think I heard you say something, wanted to kind of understand that I heard it the right way. Did you talk about doing fiber to the prim to every city resident. Did you say that earlier?
I did say that. I said that is really the North Star. That, you know, that is the direction that we gave our consultants to come back with a, you know, a plan. And obviously there's tiers to that plan, but that is certainly something that we need to be able to get our hands around and understand what that means, certainly from a cost perspective, to be able to actually have that conversation. But yes, I know that is something we've spoken to in the past.
Yeah.
And any modern city has to have a plan to have city fiber to every address to be.
No, we basically, are we basically saying like fiber to a node, or are we actually saying fiber to the prem?
So ultimately, fiber to the prem would be the ideal. I mean, obviously, as you just pointed out, there are steps to get there, and you know, the step before that would be fiber to the neighborhood or fiber to the intersection, right? And kind of backing up from there, you know, how we get that last drop, and you know, it's not even the last mile, right? It's the last probably a couple 100 yards, is still TBD. But those are some of the things we're looking at in our overall plan, and it's why we, with the CIO and I, look back at expanding the scope of the strategic plan to make sure that we were looking at all options, up to and including that.
I'm not sure if you know that's my background, so I'll be really interested in understanding the plan around that. I mean, for me, it just seems like it's probably not cost effective, you know, at the current moment, unless new technology has come out to make it that way. So really interested in trying to understand that plan. But when you said that, my ears and my eyes and everything lit up, because
absolutely,
you know, that's surprising this time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm so excited to hear that there's a strategic plan to get municipal broadband, and I do hope that there's a way to make sure that the council and our residents are included in that, because I think that's a humongous, you know, priority. So can you talk a little bit about what that process is going to be?
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman Ramos. The plan, as I stated earlier, the plan is to be able to publish our strategic plan by this fall. Along with that, I actually will be hopefully being able to sit down with every council person to discuss not just the overall plan, but have some specific questions for you and your districts, and how those priorities need to be weighed in our overall plan.
So there's no process for us to be involved or our residents to be involved in the actual planning. You're doing sort of all because I get it's very technical, so I understand that, but I think there are some things that our residents are very interested in making sure happens if we're actually going to do broadband. So are you going to do a public meeting? Are you going to, you know, what does that look like?
We have not decided on specific public meetings, but would absolutely be interested in doing that. Absolutely. As we, you know, work to develop the plan, a lot of what's been being, as I referred to, the plan is really on the technical side to develop an engineering plan, as President Mosby has pointed out, right? There's a lot of technical aspects to that, and being able to develop a cost estimate associated with that. But we have not made any decisions as far as how we implement. There are a number of different options, and certainly having input from Baltimore's residents would be very important to that.
Yeah, I understand. Whatever you and the council president were talking about, I figured it out, but I realize that there are technical issues that, you know, that it's very technical, but I do want to make, because this is such a big deal and a huge priority for our city, that there is, you know, some way to either participate in the plan, know the plan, or at least on the implementation side, how we're going to do this. The other thing is just a technical thing for either of you. I can't find the Chief Data Officer or Office of Digital Equity in the budget book. So if someone could lead me to that to understand how much your budgets are, that would be great. But it's not under mayoralty.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Mira to address that, because that's kind of all encompassing here. But
yeah, it should be under mayoralty. Let me open my book here.
Unless you guys know the exact page in the budget book, but I'm assuming she's going to get to it a little quicker.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I believe it falls under city administrator, I believe. Let me double check though. If you won't mind just coming back to me, it's under Mayor Alley somewhere. I have to locate it though.
No problem. Councilwoman Ramos, we'll come back on that one if that's all right. Just give her a couple minutes.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues?
Mr. Chair.
I got Conway first and then Dorsey. He beat you by a split second.
I was just gonna say thanks for using Courier font. That's all.
You're welcome. It's actually a Consolus, not Courier. I hate to correct you in a council hearing.
Councilman Dorsey, you have to take back your kudos now.
Man,
I award you points for that one, Justin.
Thanks.
That was bold.
Look, I just wanted to say that I'm excited to see Justin in his new role. We had a chance to cross paths back when I was at City Stat, and I got to see what he was doing in his hobby time, blogging about some of the data that we had, which got me to thinking actually quite a bit about some of the opportunities that we have with making our data public and how it can help us become a better city and a more thoughtful city, and how we leverage our resources, how we attack problems, and how we understand our problems. So just really excited to see you in your new role. So congratulations, and just really looking forward to your thoughts about how we can get more people engaged and leverage more data minds like yours to help us become a more efficient, effective, and better city all around.
I appreciate that, council member. Thank you.
Mira?
Yeah, the funding for the digital equity position is found on page 347 of volume 1. It is under mayoralty. If you look under major budget highlights, you see the 4th bullet down mentions the creation of one new grant funded position, the director of broadband and digital equity. So it is found under mayoralty.
And quick follow-up, with this being a grant funded position, I guess this question is for the city administrator, Mr. Shorter. This position is intended to be here permanently, right?
That's a hard question to answer. Certainly the functional area is intended to be a part of our government as a priority. Right now, it is not a part of the budget, and I wouldn't be able to commit to funding the PIN beyond this budget. But yes, it is a priority for us.
Let me ask a question a different way. The hope is to be able to continue to fund this as a priority. Is that safe to say? Okay.
It's very safe to say. We have significant work to do to make sure that we are aligning resources. But yes, the hope is that we will be able to fund more permanently the position.
Let me go back to Councilwoman Ramos. Did you have anything in follow up to that?
So is that why it's not considered a separate activity under mayoralty because it's grant funded? Like, this is such a big deal. It seems like both the data officer and chief equity officer and the work that has to be done seems to need to be separate.
Noted. We could look at that
and find it.
Yeah, we could make it a separate activity in the future. It's currently under the chief administrator's office, the city administrator activity.
Yeah.
But noted.
And I'll just add to that, in a practical sense, the broadband digital equity chief, the chief data officer, and our director for our Office of Performance and Innovation all report to me directly. Again, my hope is that shows you the mayor's priority for all of these items and the real synergy between the way that they can and should be working together. I really appreciate that they've been brought before you today with BCIT because of the role that information technology will play in bringing these forward successfully. So I hope that gives you the confidence, Councilwoman, that we are certainly going to make sure that we are successful in pushing as hard as we can to bring transparent data to our residents and to bring digital equity to our residents as well.
Mr. Chair, can I answer that?
Sure.
Thank you. So I definitely agree. I mean, you've got, you know, the fact that the priorities that we've been talking about for a while are in these plans. It's just not in the budget book. So to me, from a transparency standpoint, you know, it would be helpful to separate it out. That's something for next year. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to have everybody together as well in this way, to explain how it all fits together. I just think it's important that we break it out in the book so that it's transparent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions? Todd, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. It's a pleasure working with you. Justin, I've heard just wonderful things about you, and really looking forward to working with you. And Jason, we're very lucky to have you back with the city. So thank you. We are now in recess. We will be back at 6 p.m. sharp for the health department. Thank you.